Okay, let's dive in. In a world where, the loudest voices seem to grab all the attention, think billionaires tweeting constantly, launching rockets, basically making a spectacle. Imagine someone who's just 35, has a $10.1 billion fortune, but is, well, remarkably quiet. So quiet, really, that most people in Silicon Valley probably wouldn't even recognize him if they walked past him. It really begs the question, doesn't it? How do you build that kind of wealth, that kind of influence, almost silently?
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole paradox of John Collison. He's the co-founder and president of Stripe. Now, Stripe, maybe you don't know the name directly, but you've almost certainly used it. It's like the invisible plumbing for online payments, powering Amazon, Shopify, Lyft, OpenAI, literally millions of businesses. We're talking over $1 trillion processed annually. It's huge. And Collison himself, he kind of embodies that same invisible power.
Yeah, and what's really compelling, I think, is that his quiet approach doesn't feel like just a personality quirk. It feels deliberate, like a conscious strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And it challenges so much what we think we know about success, about influence, especially today. Makes you wonder if all that noise is actually necessary,
And I completely agree. It really does. So today we're doing a deep dive into the mind behind this quiet empire. We want to explore not just what he and his brother Patrick built with Stripe, but how John Collison did it. Why is he so consistently under the radar? And maybe most importantly, what can this alternative path teach you about building something lasting, something meaningful? Right, so this whole quiet thing around John Collison, it really starts with how he seems to view wealth itself. Because, most billionaires, when they hit a milestone, it's like instant public news, maybe a new super yacht announcement. But when Forbes reported his net worth hit $10.1 billion back in May 2025, just silence. No Instagram flex, no triumphant tweet, nothing. And honestly, when I first saw that number, I thought, okay, here comes the big flashy purchase.
Yeah.
And then crickets. It really made me pause.
It's almost countercultural, isn't it? We're so conditioned to expect that spectacle. But if you look closer, connect the dots, it seems less about personal taste and more like a fundamental redefinition of what wealth is actually for. He doesn't seem to see it as a trophy, something to show off, or like a scoreboard. It seems more like a tool, something carefully manage and use for a much longer-term vision, not just for instant applause.
Exactly. And his investments really underline that, don't they? Instead of splashing cash in Silicon Valley, he's quietly bought historic properties in Ireland. In 2021, the huge Abbeylex estate, 1,120 acres, then Millbrook House in 2022. These feel like legacy moves about preservation, not about showing off online. It's like his wealth is long, not loud.
Precisely. And it's not just minimalism either. I'd maybe call it intentionalism.
Mm-hmm.
While some peers are chasing, the next metaverse hype or flying to Mars, Collison is building quietly, holding patiently, and spending with this really clear, almost ancestral kind of purpose. There's that quote attributed to him, "The best people I know are driven by building, not cashing out." That says so much.
That quote really sticks with you, this idea of money being a side effect, not the main goal. It completely reframes the whole game, doesn't it? Challenges the idea that the point is just to spend big.
Absolutely. When you see wealth as a tool for shaping something lasting, something beyond yourself, your entire perspective shifts. It moves from, instant gratification towards something much more enduring.
And that's the powerful lesson here, I think. It's not just about having wealth. It's about how you intentionally, quietly, patiently shape it for something bigger. And this quiet, long-term view isn't just about his money. It's woven into his entire career strategy. This long, invisible game he seems to be playing. I mean, think about it. We're obsessed with overnight success stories, but Stripe's start. Pretty unglamorous. John was only 19 when he and his older brother Patrick started it back in 2010. Just two brothers from Ireland. No big U.S. network, no Stanford degree. They had already sold their first company, Auctomatic, for $5 million when John was 18. That's incredible in itself. But instead of just coasting, he drops out of Harvard to tackle this really hard problem of making online payments easier for developers.
Mm-hmm. And that focus on the hard problems, the underlying systems, that's absolutely key. Stripe literally came from their own frustration. Why was accepting money online so complicated for coders? So they just built the back end themselves, spent months coding it. And this obsession with the invisible infrastructure, the foundational stuff, that's really what sets them apart. Think about it. Stripe powers payments for giants like Amazon, Shopify, Lyft, OpenAI, processing, over $1.4 trillion in 2024? Yet most end users, most customers, they don't even know Stripe is there. It just works silently.
It really is like the internet's plumbing, isn't it? Essential, totally ubiquitous, but you only think about it if something goes wrong. So this invisibility is actually a feature, not a bug in their strategy. He's not chasing the spotlight, he's chasing robust essential infrastructure. But doesn't building something so invisible make it harder to get noticed initially, especially in Silicon Valley?
It probably does present challenges early on, sure, but it also creates this incredibly strong competitive advantage, a deep moat. When your service is so deeply embedded in how millions of businesses operate, your influence becomes incredibly sticky, hard to replace. It really makes you ask, what can you achieve if you prioritize building indispensable systems over just seeking constant attention? I heard an investor once describe Collison as a master of compound moves. He doesn't build fast, he builds forever.
Compound moves. I like that. It suggests this patient, methodical layering of impact, not just quick wins. So the takeaway from Collison's playbook seems clear. Maybe you play invisible, but you scale until you're inevitable. Real empires, lasting ones, are built for the long haul, not just for a quick flip. And this quiet thing, it's not just PR. It seems like a genuine daily discipline for him, almost monastic. Other tech leaders are constantly tweeting, podcasting, doing splashy interviews. John Collison rarely speaks publicly. He apparently once went 5 years without a media appearance. That's beyond just being quiet. It feels like an act of avoidance. Is it just shyness, or is it a strategy, a very deliberate one?
It really feels like the latter, doesn't it? Because the deeper layer here is how this quietness seems to permeate his decision-making. People who've worked closely with him describe him as calm in a room full of noise and obsessively thoughtful. He apparently spends hours just thinking, scribbling notes, really digging into first principles before acting. And in meetings, he's known for speaking last, only when he feels it's necessary. And supposedly, every sentence carried 3 layers of insight. It's such a stark contrast to that old move fast and break things mantra, right?
It genuinely is. Almost the anti-Silicon Valley ethos in that sense. And his day-to-day life seems to reflect that too. Very grounded, almost simple for a billionaire. No personal assistants buzzing around, no bodyguards. Rides a bike. Reads constantly. And get this, he apparently still codes. Says he finds joy in debugging systems, that it's where clarity begins. Amazing. And maybe the most telling habit, his refusal to sell out. Stripe was clearly never built just to be sold. He resisted going public despite that massive $95 billion valuation and, you can imagine, huge pressure from investors. He chose permanence, control, over the quick exit.
It's such a radical choice in today's tech climate, isn't it? Everyone seems to be chasing the IPO or the acquisition. But for Collison, it feels like the real discipline isn't just about what he does. It's profoundly about what he refuses to do. He refuses to perform for the media circus. He refuses to rush the long-term vision. He refuses to build just for applause or a fast payout. He's prioritizing depth, substance, long-term impact over any kind of immediate, flashy display.
And that right there is maybe the core lesson for you, the listener. His success seems built on the noise he tunes out, on what he deliberately won't do. Focus. So it's pretty clear John Collison's quietness isn't about being timid. It feels like it comes from deep clarity. His whole philosophy seems to boil down to think long, move quiet, decide deep. While everyone else is maybe chasing quarterly results or the next hot trend, he's operating on these decade-long horizons. He seems genuinely interested in what lasts, not just what's popular right now. So how does this translate into making those huge company-defining decisions? Like, specifically, the decision not to take Stripe public.
Right, that IPO refusal is a prime example. By staying private, Stripe kept fundamental control. They shielded their long-term mission, building that global economic infrastructure from the intense short-term pressures of the public markets, the quarterly earnings calls, the stock price volatility. He's not building for Q3 earnings. He's clearly thinking about 2035, maybe 2045. And it forces you to ask, what is real leadership? Is it just maximizing shareholder value this quarter? Or is it safeguarding a long-term vision, sometimes against those immediate pressures? Collison's choice feels like a quiet rebellion against the whole speed-obsessed economy. He's prioritizing control over destiny.
I definitely see that. But playing devil's advocate for a second, could staying too quiet or resisting conventional paths like an IPO mean you get overlooked? Or maybe even miss out on certain opportunities in this fast world? Is there a line?
That's a fair question. But for Collison, it seems the visibility, the power, comes from the impact of what Stripe actually does, not from his personal brand or a big IPO splash. It's a different kind of influence. The product, the system, speaks volumes, maybe louder than the person could. And the long-term vision dictates the short-term moves, not the other way around. You see this deep philosophy in his personal actions too. Buying Abbey Lick's estate, Not a billionaire flex, it felt like preserving Irish heritage. Getting involved with YIMBY housing initiatives in California, that's the Yes in My Backyard movement for more housing that wasn't just PR. That showed long-view thinking about urban economics. Understanding that affordable housing fuels talent, which fuels innovation. It connects. His core principle seems to be something like, make the world slightly more elegant than you found it.
Make the world slightly more elegant. I really like that. It's subtle but profound. In an age where attention spans are shrinking and everyone wants instant results, his decision-making style feels almost revolutionary. What really stands out to you about the sort of quiet stance for timelessness? It feels like he layers decisions. He doesn't just leap. He reframes problems, doesn't just react.
Yeah, and don't mistake the quietness for a lack of power. Collison's influence is immense, just subtle. He doesn't need the headlines or the celebrity status. His power flows from the design of Stripe. That invisible infrastructure again, it quietly shapes the global economy every minute of every day. Millions of businesses, from tiny startups to huge public companies, rely on his code to move money. He doesn't put himself front and center in that narrative. His impact just keeps deepening, almost as his personal profile fades back.
It's a really profound example of what you might call influence without identity. His impact grows even as he avoids the spotlight. And look at his policy influence, too. Back in 2018, Stripe backing those YMBY housing initiatives in California, that was unusual for a tech company then. He wasn't just virtue signaling, you could see the system's thinking. Affordable housing enables talent mobility, which is crucial for innovation ecosystems. It's all connected. It reinforces the idea. Power isn't just performance or personality, it can be quiet, fundamental design. And often the more invisible the design, the more powerful it actually becomes.
That's a really compelling idea. And we saw this whole philosophy, the silent descent model, really put to the test, didn't we? During the Stripe layoffs in March 2023, they cut 14% of their staff, citing the tough macro environment. That's a public stumble for any company, a moment of real vulnerability. But Collison and his brother, they didn't hide or spin. They co-wrote this letter to staff described as brutally honest and quietly hopeful, took full responsibility, just clarity and ownership.
And what happened next? Within a year, Stripe had stabilized, even surged, processing that $1.4 trillion, rolling out new products, securing more private funding without needing an IPO. That whole sequence is almost a perfect case study for this silent ascent model. It's about building resiliently through the tough cycles, not just trying to time them or avoid them, and doing it with this deep conviction in the long-term mission. Collison builds through market cycles, not just for them. You even saw his personal wealth grow significantly during that period, from around $7.02 to $10.11. That reflects, I think, compound ownership, silent growth, and deeply held belief.
Right. So the silent ascent model is something like build quietly, stumble honestly if you have to, recover strategically, and aim to rise permanently. It's this fundamental belief that the long term is the only game that truly matters. Hashtags, tag, outro. No. So where does this leave us? What does it all mean? Well, in a world that seems to reward noise above all else, John Collison chose clarity. In a culture obsessed with speed, with quick wins, he chose substance. He chose patience. In a valley seemingly addicted to the spotlight, he stayed in the shadows and quietly built the essential plumbing for the internet economy. He didn't need to brand himself a genius. He didn't rush to cash out. He didn't posture. He just showed up, kept building, kept thinking, kept refining. Quietly.
And it really challenges that core assumption, doesn't it? That impact requires visibility. Maybe the most powerful conversations, maybe the most significant changes actually start with a whisper, not a shout. Collison's story kind of reminds us that sometimes the people who are too focused to perform, too steady to be easily rattled, too thoughtful to just react, maybe they're the ones who quietly end up reshaping things the most.
You don't need to be loud to leave a legacy. Sometimes the ones who whisper, they're the ones who reshape the world. So the question for you to think about is, what does John Collison's quiet, disciplined, long game approach challenge in your own thinking about what it means to achieve something significant, to make an impact?